Can you hear me? Can you? Okay. And so I guess we are a pretty unique case for Russia because we really try to tailor contemporary creative practices, social practices, and incorporate it into different social spheres. Because traditionally, art in Russia is somewhere, and somewhere, and society is on another side. And there is no real mechanism which would really bring these two spheres together. So through our practices, which is very much multidisciplinary based, we try to put those things together and see how creative practice could really foster some changes in and sort of bring into discussion or partly solve some different issues. So our background is from visual art and social sciences, and so we, I hope in a pretty harmonic way, blend this expertise together and present it in the results of our projects.
Well, we're just going to be talking about one particular project because it very much relates to the conference topic, and I think reflects upon our practice mostly of all the other initiatives that we're doing. And I think we can actually also relate it to Jana's talk, because when I was looking at this shots of this house, being so violently destroyed, I think there's a certain connection between critical mass, the project that we're working on right now, and how all of this mechanisms and kind of opposition between the government and the citizens is still very much present in the Russian society, and how distant are all of the actors within the city kind of environment. And I think that was a starting point for critical mass, which was initiated as a platform for a wider, proactive, collaborative discussion back in 2010, when a certain kind of critical mass of questions related to the urban environment and city landscape and kind of powers within the city accumulated. And we were thinking about how we can actually discuss those questions in some possible way and with some possible language that would be interesting for different people and could involve different groups within the society. Therefore, critical mass is very much of a research-based project, which kind of connects people from different backgrounds, artists, curators, designers, representatives of local governments, somewhat politicians who are much more difficult to involve than anyone else. And I think we're going to speak about that a little bit later, to some extent, all of us maybe. Very briefly, we'll just start maybe with how the project started, with the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, we conducted, the project exists for 6 years, and it naturally breaks into 2 years period because we take 1 year for identifying a problem and research it together with artists, social scientists, local government, and developers, businessmen, whoever we could really drag into that process. And then the 2nd year would be a presentation of results of this project. So we're like agents moving through the city, identifying problems that are lying a little bit on the surface and discussing mass media, which we sort of following our intuition and get into. And all 3 seasons or editions of Critical Mass were touching upon rather different questions, but within this broader framework of discussing the life of a city today, position of citizens within this life, everyday life, and the connections between citizens, government, and possibility of artists to be part of this discourse and facilitate some changes. So the first, I think, like going through a little bit in retrospect, we could also analyze a little bit like our practice and the way how we interacted with the government and with citizens, because like for the 6 years of practice in public spaces, we also have learned a lot. And another aspect of our interest is also to learn about the notion of public space in the post-Soviet conditions. So through this practice, through talking to people with very different groups, to conducting, like pulling all strings together in order to make project happening, you really like gather this very unique information about like perception of the space, position of an individual within different public spaces, how state institutions are operating in connection to citizens, how local government seeing their role in the everyday life of local community. All these questions we kind of raising or coming about while our practice, and I think it being enormous source for us to learn about it within these 6 years. And we started from in 2011 in with a, I think, pretty straightforward way of raising different issues connected to position of migrant within, I mean, that at that time, the discourse about migrants was slightly different than now, or guest workers. And also questions related to ecology and the kind of wealth within like glamorous Russian society as well. We also came across, so all projects were within the first edition of Critical Mass were rather, they were site specific, they were less interactive, they were very attractive visually, and we also came across to several cases of vandalism, which is very normal, I guess, things in that kind of practice that we're doing. And, but then we decided to move to different issues in the second edition related to the identity of dormitory district, which is a very hot topic, I think, for any big city when especially as St. Petersburg, which is very centralized, having like enormous amount of block building developed in the 60s around the city. So we took one of those neighborhoods and started to dig into that.
And well, I think for us it also was quite interesting to kind of change the tactics and change the strategy and move from this very kind of successful, visually very kind of rich story to something more community-based and something more research-based and something more interactive and engaging for people, because first that was kind of the tendency, and second that was something that allowed us to change something and move some processes and maybe start some mechanisms within maybe very local context, but that would kind of remain there and would be sustainable. And that's, I think, how the entire trajectory of the process, of the project started to change. So we chose a very kind of typical dormant district with a huge criminal reputation from the 90s, and I'm sure locals understand what I'm talking about. However, recently, many energy on the part of the local administration was put into changing the image of this neighborhood. And since the government seemed to be so progressive, sort of, that was for us also a sign of their readiness to cooperate and engage into a joint project with independent curators. This is why we addressed them and proposed them to do a project of public art in their neighborhood together. However, we were very much disappointed with this kind of their view on how things should be, and I think that was one of the most difficult processes when we were communicating with the local government, because they would never say no to us explicitly. And if you do something in a public space in Russia, you always have to have a yes, and it should be like a whole set of documents with yes from different services, municipalities, and so on. But we would start going to their office to submit all the projects that were suggested by a group of artists that were participating in the project that year. And the local administration would be just, playing this kind of table tennis with us, because they would never say no, but they said, you know what, I'm not actually in charge of this decision. You should go check with that department. And for about a year, we would be visiting different offices in order to coordinate the process. Anyways, in the end, everything worked well. And I think the most important thing in the project in 2013 was engagement with very different communities, from a very big family, which actually also suffered from housing problem in the 60s, to a local school that has a museum of local history, and engaged into kind of collecting this local history together, to activists, which appeared to be quite in large number in the neighborhood, very much caring about preserving their local history, and actually writing this history. So doing also some mission on the part of the government. It's a funny thing that the book that was issued by the activist was later kind of stolen and reprinted by the local municipality as the result of their own research. So kind of property of public space and ownership of the public space and public knowledge is still a very big issue in Russia. So I think that was the turning point for critical mass, when this engagement and involvement aspect has become the most important for us, and it's gotten developed widely within the season of 2014-2015, when we started working with even a smaller context, very much historically based, but also very much related to ownership of public place, ownership of history, and ownership of collective memory.
So if in the second edition of Critical Mass we wanted, the dramaturgy or scenography of the place was really much spread in one big neighborhood, which is like about 500,000 people living in. So then in the last edition of Critical Mass we decided to work with the problem which is very much based on questions related to the preservation of historical heritage, cultural identity, history of the place, complex analysis of the history. And we raised this question and talked and discussed it around the case of Gromov Dacha. It's a wooden mansion built in the middle of 19th century by a wealthy man named Vasily Gromov. That's the name of this dacha. It used to be a wooden house out of the city, while he would have a stone house in the inside. In the city center. But then city developed, and this dacha became a part of the central area of St. Petersburg. And it has a really complex history, imperial history, and very rich Soviet history, and very difficult position within this current time. So we decided to curate project around this case, and all events happened around this case were related either to history or to the present or to the future of this building.
Yes, because just very briefly to outline what it was a proper mansion, then it was appropriated by the state, and the state placed a TV station there, then a pioneer house, then a sanatorium for workers. Then after the Soviet Union collapsed, the place was turned into kind of an office building where commercial firms were renting out the space. And then in early 2000, it was neglected and stayed there, and homeless people would just find shelter there. So all of these historical layers are very much present within the building, because you see how it was cut, and you know, just there were smaller rooms created. So all of this kind of 70 years of the Soviet Union are very much reflected in the architecture and interior of the building.
And when we started to work with this case, the building was closed, but with a series of our event happening in the research period of the project in summer 2014, so sort of open up doors for this building for people living around. And this community around of various age, they love this building because they have a very close emotional, cultural, and historical touch to this building. Someone went there as a pioneer, someone went there for dance studio. So people would just have different encounters with this building in various years. Someone worked there during the 90s. And finally, they could get in because they couldn't understand what exactly happening inside and what's going to be with this building. And I think it's also important to mention that the building located in a very beautiful garden, which is also a very loved spot by the local community. There is also one period of the history of this building that it's an interesting case for grassroots movements, because in the beginning of 2000, the building was about to be destroyed because of gentrification. One developer wanted to have a luxurious hotel in that park, but the local community didn't let it happen. So it's also kind of interesting case to work around how the local community, which is in fact very strong and very united, fought for this building, which made it even more valuable for them. So when there was this research part of the building, the garden around was under construction. And it was just, you know, suddenly the building was closed, the garden was closed, people didn't understand what exactly is going on. And in that area, there are not that many green spots. So people didn't have any possibility to understand. So we had, with our events, we could also create this possibility for those workers working in the garden and local residents to meet and discuss like what exactly is going on. And then we're moving to the sort of a second year of the third edition of Critical Mass, and we so the building was sort of closed for the renovation, but the garden was open, and we still wanted to. The process of renovating this building happened faster than we expected, so we thought that we will still use the building before it's closed for renovation and conduct our project there. But nevertheless, all projects which have been happening, they were really much connected to the history of the place and to the history of the garden as well, and to the future of that.
But it was very important for us to engage with the local community, because once they already kind of had a voice and stated something and never let the building go. And for us, it was very important to kind of visualize this ownership and memories and their hopes with the place that they have. So, and I think that was the most kind of interactive critical masses of all, because the focus was kind of a co-creative process with the people living in the neighborhood. So one of the projects, for instance, this one was, and the artist is right here, Anya. She visualized all the memories and all the stories that passersby would tell her that were related to the area. And it was a slow process a little bit. We had from 3 to 5 days when Anya was at the site working with the stories. So in the beginning, people were quite scared. They were quite reluctant. They saw a banner. They saw another reconstruction process taking place in the garden. But then somehow they pretty much opened up and they started telling their stories. There was a line, literally, when people were very willing for their story to be visualized and to have a certain place at the banner. So Anya had a whole notebook filled of different stories and memories. We also had some certain critique about how some of the things were drawn on the banner, and we were also accused of not being committed to historical truth, which I think is also an interesting phenomenon. So reinterpretation of the memories by the artist for some people was something to be critical of, and that especially was concerning the memories about the Second World War. Another project that was connected to memory and which also attracted quite a large audience was a project by Silas Emery, a Dutch artist, who created a fictional memory commission. And the kind of templates, memorial templates, were with some information about the past of the location were put in the garden.
This year we also, like the project which were part of critical mass were very much connected, very much process based. So we didn't really have that many projects that would just be present in the garden straight away. So there was several projects, design projects that engaged local community a lot. And this project was somehow connected to the future of this garden and to this Gromov Dacha. Project by Raum Labor launched the workshop called Emma, and the project was about building up furniture in the garden. So kids of 3 to 12 age, under the supervision of designers, they built different modules that could be used in the future for some public gatherings, for games, for events. And it was placed in the garden, and visitors of the garden and neighbors were invited to take this anywhere in the garden and sort of organize their own resting or private zones within this area. And with this project, we sort of showed how else the garden could live and what else could be done here besides just walking in this beautiful, very historical area of the city.
Yeah, because there is no infrastructure whatsoever, and this is a very typical case in St. Petersburg, that preservation of memory means reconstruction of a place as it appeared 200 years ago or something. So this kind of clinginess to past is very typical for developers here, for local governments that are improving city landscapes and so on. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to bring some new life, some new ways of using the space that also could be community-based. And people loved the project, they get really involved, they helped building it, and then they were using it. And what was really cool, none of the objects was damaged by the people. And this I see somewhat of a change since the first critical mass, because this feeling of ownership which people received while they were helping making these objects made them to be very careful with them. So we also had this gazebo, which was built by Riket Pau, Dutch artist, also was many local residents, and it was a very difficult process, but in the end it appeared to be a very beautiful structure.
Yeah, we commissioned him this wooden pavilion because on the historical pictures we've seen, it was a sort of a wooden pavilion in the garden previously, and we wanted him to have a reconstruction of that, but not just a pavilion, but also as a public space, creative public space. And so he made a really interesting construction for art events, for a place where people could just have their private spot, or just very simply to have a rain shelter, because in the garden there is no roof, nothing where you can just, in St. Petersburg weather, I think it's also a very practical matter. So, and then when this wooden pavilion or gazebo as a tea house, as Richard was saying, when it was put up, so we started to incorporate there other projects of artists that were participating in this exhibition.
But we're not going to talk about all the projects because it's taking a lot of time, and all of them are available at the website. I think it's very important to say that the project also had a large performative aspect, and we gathered quite a large audience for the performances, and we used actively all the objects that were built during the project. So what happened, and I think this is an interesting outcome, also a little bit sad, but also something to be analyzed, is that first we had an agreement with the government that everything what was created as a part of the project is going to stay there till the very end, till October 10th, which is actually tomorrow. However, at one point, we got some notice from them that they would like everything to be removed from the garden. And maybe we didn't take it so seriously because it was not a formal notice, it was just some rumor, and we've heard that the local government is not very happy about park being used not in a very traditional way. So one day, everything just disappeared. All of the furniture, the gazebo, even this red templates, all was gone. The banner was gone as well. And when we started looking for everything, all of the municipal services, all of the officials that we had been in touch with said that they have no idea about where everything is gone. And probably it's just the city residents that like the objects so much that they have taken them. But you can take so much objects, so many of them, in a non-organized way. I mean, you have to have a car or a truck or something to put it in there, and just, you can do that invisibly. So everything is missing. We still don't know where it is. So all of the artworks that were created have disappeared. They're gone missing. And this is not something we would expect. We would much more expect something to be missing because people would like to take something. But in fact, the role of the vandal was played by the state in this situation, in this case.
So we had a very official agreement based on official paper signed by the head of the local government that the project can take place in this park. So it was running for 3 weeks without any problems. And we were just really happy that finally, after 6 years of struggle with local government, this is a kind of very healthy way how we pursuing this, because government is happy. Citizens are happy. We felt like so fulfilled with this meaningful process that we conducting within our project. Plus, when we just started this process, we enter this campaign on preserving the building, which was started by the head of the youth department within the local government, and we sort of join in. So, like, how else, right? We could help this building to save. How else we could help to gather extra information about how this building could be used in the future when it's renovated, that it's not just renovated old house that is or museum or dead spot. So we wanted, with the information we gathered during this 2 years period, we really wanted to pass this further, so then it could be taken under consideration and somehow used in the further programming of this building. And so then everything was working greatly. And then at some point, we came across of a phone call connected to the committee which was responsible for renovating this garden. And this garden is so old that it's actually a historical monument. And according to them, nothing new could appear there. And nothing which is not belonging to this park could appear there. And we never been part of a conversation of different administrative body within the neighborhood. So we had only one contact person who told us that everything gonna be fine. Either she really wanted to kind of, I mean, she honestly wanted to this project being happening because she's young, very active woman that actually fostered the project, which led finally to the renovation of this building, of this mansion. And but then it was just total miscommunication or disagreement on this administrative body within different parts that are taking care of the neighborhood.
And this leaves us, again, with more questions than answers, because we see how the entire system, municipal system, is very discoordinated. So people who take decisions about the city are very much in miscommunication. They don't understand each other, they don't hear each other. They have like different areas of responsibility, and they don't really want to interact. What they want is to compete over some power that they have. So if one person says yes, for another one it's like somewhat of a challenge to say no to this project, just because I have more power, it's for me to decide, and there is no way you're doing something in my garden. And this is even like the rhetorics that they use. They don't say public garden or, I don't know, city garden. They say my garden. And I think it all kind of returns us to the question of to whom public space actually belongs in Russia, because we have this Soviet heritage of public space belonging to the state, and public space is being very much controlled by the state. And all of the attempts that are done by activists, artists, curators in the public space are just this kind of little islands and little attempts of winning the space, winning this public space back and returning the city to the citizens. But it seems to be a much of a more complex process, especially in the current political situation when public space is being much more controlled and monitored on the part of the state.
It's also connected to the whole philosophy of the city of St. Petersburg as a museum city, that everyone, like 300 years ago, it was the most contemporary project you could imagine, art-wise, architecture-wise, city planning-wise, but the city never changed. It's just so much a preserved, it's just so much preserved sort of organism that is not leaving, but sort of a fading out. And I think our case is also showing that don't touch my garden, it's so old, I don't want to have anything new in there. Although we had so many positive responses from citizens, and it's not just I'm saying that it was great. We have a profound sociological research which we're gonna put on paper. They're gonna quote people. They're gonna have like some real deep analysis of that. That's actually what we always do within our critical mass, and it's very important for us to develop this channel between users of our project. And people were just like really appropriated that. And it was, for us, you can imagine what we felt when we found out that everything gone. It was just everything gone, like it's never been there. So the city was living, the garden was living its full life because, you know, people that go there, it's a very close community. People go there almost every day. They bike there, they run there, they go walk with their dogs, they go to work with their kids. So they're really being always there in conversation with us regarding our projects. And plus with some of them, we've been together for 2 years because we returned 1 year later. And yeah, and now after several interviews with heads of different, of this sort of a committee that was responsible that everything is okay in this garden, the person just said, I don't know, I didn't give any orders. Local administration says we didn't give any orders. We basically don't know who took that. So, but we're pretty sure, we can't say for 100%, but we're pretty sure there was a sort of a order from above regarding that it's just something wrong. We don't want it. Yeah.
So we're wrapping up, because for us it's a very emotional story and we can talk about it for for a long time. But we would probably take 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, and then we're running for lunch, which starts at 3.